Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Community Development Director Dan Flores. Looks like he's already got a sign. And Christina, hopefully I say this right, Heredia. I'm very, very happy to have both of them on board to help us work on both economic development and our planning and development efforts to move Marysville forward and create more job opportunities, more housing, and a lot of other opportunities for the community. So welcome both of you.
Thank you. We're going to talk about that in a minute right now.
I hope this is the appropriate time, but
Please.
I did have one item to make an adjustment to, and that is item 9. That's the analysis for outsourcing consolidation of public safety and dispatch function. The consultant that we are looking to hire, we cannot, basically the item cannot remain on the agenda as an action item. And that is because the consultant has not confirmed their registration with the state as a business entity in California. Item, if we so desire, but we cannot vote approving the consulting agreement until the consultant has is a legal entity in the state, and that was confirmed with our city attorney. So that if we choose to do that, that would have to be ratified at a later date.
Well, I see we have 2 presentations coming up. Before that, let's decide what we're going to do with respect to agenda item number 9. It can remain as a discussion item. And I know there's a number of people here today who have made their presence known because that item is on the agenda. So if it's going to remain a discussion item with no objection, I would move it to the agenda immediately following the 2 presentations so that we could have that discussion. And if it's not going to remain a discussion, if there's an objection to maintaining it as a discussion item, then those folks will be able to comment when the community consent calendar is presented. The advantage of having the discussion item is that then those who came to participate in the discussion of this item from the community would be able to hear from council as to the points of view from the council. Is there any objection to moving the agenda item as a discussion item to the point after these 2 first presentations?
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So if we have this discussion, which I'm not opposed to, we're going to have it again if this comes back on the agenda. So we're going to have to discuss it at the particular time when the vote comes up. So we're going to be doing this twice, which I appreciate seeing the community come, and that's awesome. Because I'm not 100% sure when it's going to go, but I can feel the temperature. It's all good. But we're going to have this conversation twice on this dais if we allow discussion tonight.
Then, well, so there's no objection moving it forward.
Yeah, I am objecting to have conversation twice. Let me be clear on that.
Okay, then people who want to speak to it will be speaking to it without any input or the value of.
That is awesome.
Okay, then we will proceed, and again, the community and consent calendar will come up, let's see, immediately after these two presentations, and folks will be able to comment on anything they wish, including any items that weren't, including the matter at number 9. Okay. First presentation, I understand we have a presentation from Ryan McNally regarding the last major flood event in Yuba County. There's a button press to turn on the microphone. There you go, you found it.
All right.
Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. My name is Ryan McNally. I'm the Director of Water Resources and Flood Risk Reduction for the Yuba Water Agency. And yeah, I'm here to talk about it. I think the title's a little misleading. We've had several flood events since 1997, but I'm here to talk about 1997 in particular. 25 years ago and 1 month. Now, this is a presentation we've crafted for January, but it's February 1st. It's 25 years ago and 1 month. That bowl up there in that corner was surrounded by water. And we're going to talk a little bit this evening about, you know, what we've done since that 1997 flood event. So again, Ryan McNally, Director of Water Resources, Flood Risk Reduction for Yuba Water Agency. And one of my primary roles as the water agency is to ensure we remain invested in and strengthen our flood protection program to protect everyone in Yuba County. So I'm the flood guy and the drought guy. I get the best of both worlds. I think many of us here probably remember 1997. I know I do. I was here in 1997. I evacuated from the city of Marysville in 1997, as well as 1986. But here we are again, 25 years later, and to talk about, you know, how we're here to protect the people of Yuba County and what we've done. Before I dive right into the presentation, up on the slideshow are 5 primary missions at the Yuba Water Agency that I will kind of briefly touch on. Flood risk reduction, sustainable water supply. So those are my 2 areas: hydropower generation, fisheries protection, and recreation at New Bullard's Bar. Tonight, I really want to hone in on flood risk reduction, though, because that is the catalyst that created the Yuba County Water Agency in the 1950s. Again, that bowl up there was surrounded by water in 1955, and that was the catalyst that got the Board of Supervisors off top dead center to found the Yuba County Water Agency. Slide, please.
And by that hole, you're referring to the city of Marysville surrounded by levees?
That's right. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's
the
not as charming as I'd come up with. Oh, bowl.
Oh, no, not a hole, not a hole.
I heard hole, and I'm thinking, I was ready to take offense.
No. I was born and raised here. That's definitely not a hole. No. So I think everyone here knows around 3 major rivers: the Yuba, the Feather, and the Bear Rivers. And in a lot of respects, the region is defined by these rivers. But I think it's easy to forget how flashy and dangerous they can be. So in addition to the hydrology, which we'll get into in a minute, one of the factors that also contributes to the flood risk here in Yuba County includes the levees and the historic gold mining legacy. So hydraulic gold mining in the foothills, just in Yuba County and above, resulted in tailings washing down the river and actually increasing the riverbed, the Yuba River channel, to an elevation higher than the city of Marysville. So you can imagine how much that exacerbated flooding. As a result, settlers built piecemeal levees, they built bypasses, they built dams. But that really, what that did is just caused more flooding. So looking back in time between the years 1805 and 1997, there have been more than 30 major flood events in the Sacramento Valley, and pretty much every single one of them had impacted Yuba County. I mean, Yuba County is right there. Slide, please. So the hydrology, atmospheric rivers cause most flood events, or most floods in Yuba County. So yeah, we hear about these on all the time, atmospheric rivers. The rivers in the sky, long, narrow bands of water vapor that produce major rainfall. The big takeaway here is they're capable of producing as much water as 25 Mississippi rivers. And when that lands in Northern California, that water goes somewhere. And as the bullet points out, you know, atmospheric rivers have caused pretty much all the major floods in Yuba County. So in 1997, though, we did not call these atmospheric rivers, we called them the Pineapple Express. You may recall that term that we used so endearingly in the 1990s. Slide, please. Oh, one other point on that. These things change, they can change, they're so dramatic, they change the hydrology literally overnight. And a good example of that is what we saw in December. We came off the driest year, one of the driest years in history, to now a record snowpack for the month of December in a matter of a week. These things change things overnight. So just because we're dry today doesn't mean next week we won't have, super wet conditions. So, and so goes it in the state of California. Slide, please. Oh, there we go. So reaching back a little bit further, February 20, 1986, as the Yuba River recedes after a week of historic flows, a portion of the levee protecting Linda collapses, killing 2 and inundating 4,000 homes. The picture on the left illustrates Linda, and you can see the Peachtree Mall, which unfortunately is being torn down right now. But that was a catalyst for the Yuba River Basin Project. And so the Yuba River Basin Project is where the Yuba County Water Agency requested Congress and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to act and urged them to bring 200-year level of flood protection to Yuba County. So as that was ongoing and as that was gaining some steam, January 1997, after 8 days of heavy rainfall that caused rapid snowmelt and runoff and swollen rivers, 2 levee breaches claimed 3 lives and nearly 1,000 homes in South Yuba County. So as this Yuba River Basin Project is growing in strength, the collaboration to bring money into Yuba County to improve the levees, this 1997 event really invigorated that effort. And so the Yuba River Basin Project was redesigned and reauthorized, and it brought in tremendous outside resources to the county for levee improvements, and the work continues today. And that's what we're going to dive into. Slide, please. So 25 years since 1997, what's changed? Up on the screen is kind of a slideshow. This really doesn't do it justice. I would invite everybody to go to yubawater.org to take a look. But what's changed? 2 big takeaways: $600 million in levee projects and a network of partnerships that grows to this day. Not one entity, not the city, not the county, not Yuba Water, not Trillia, not any of the RDs could have done this alone. It's been a collaboration since 1997, and we all work together toward this. And it's safe to say we've come light years ahead of where we were 2.5 decades ago. Slide, please. So flood risk reduction and partners and projects. So we've always found tremendous value in developing partnerships and working with others to improve the safety in the face of these threats with real intangible results. That's important to keep in mind, though. These are real projects that really get done. I want to dive into our partners in the flood risk reduction world and a few of the significant projects that helped advance our safety in recent decades. So on the screen, you'll see badging there: U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, DWR, Central Valley Flood Protection Board, Marysville Levy Commission, Yuba County, City of Marysville, Three Rivers Levee Improvement Authority, RD 784, RD 817, RD 10, RD 2103. All have a seat at this table, and we've all worked together to improve the levee network in Yuba County. When I say improve the levee network, though, it's important to know that along with these local, state, and federal partners, we've invested more than $600 million to reduce flood risk since 1997. We have one of the best protected areas in the state, and again, these are our partners that have made it possible. Slide, please. So Yuba River flood risk reduction goals. 3 major goals at Yuba Water Agency. 200-year level of protection for urban areas, 100-year level of protection for agricultural areas, to coordinate and unify smaller improvement projects for increased efficiency, and to develop a long-term plan to complete construction and repairs necessary to achieve reduced flood risk. I want to talk a little bit about that first bullet point, though, because we hear that a lot, and there's a lot of confusion around that. 200-year level of protection, 100-year levels of protection. 1997 was a 100-year level event. That does not mean it only happens once every 100 years. That's just it's a measurement of magnitude. It's a probability that an event that size will happen in any given year. So it's a 1% chance any given year. So 1 in 100, 1% chance any year that we'll see an event the size of 1997. 200-year level event, that's a 0.5% chance of happening any given year. So next time you hear, the 100-year protection, 200-year protection, that's really what it is. It's not a probability of it, it happening. It's a measurement of magnitude, and a 1 in 100-year event can happen 5 years in a row. So, slide, please. Local levee districts in Yuba Water. Another misconception is that although Yuba Water Agency supports flood risk reduction we don't own any levees. All the levees in the county are owned and operated by the reclamation districts, by the cities, and by others. Our focus internally on flood risk reduction is New Bullards Bar Dam. That's where our level of protection is. But what we do is we reach out to these local reclamation districts, we reach out to the cities, and we provide resources to help them improve their flood risk reduction infrastructure. So that's really what we're talking about right now. The big ones I think everyone's familiar with right now, the Feather River and the Bear River setback levees in South Yuba County. These are multi-partner projects contributing to 200-year level of flood protection for South Yuba County. And that was just completed through the Goldfields levee, which we'll talk about in just a second. The important thing is these levees lower the flood stage upstream by 1 foot on the Bear River and 3 feet on the Feather River. That's really important because at first glance, you think, oh, a foot, that's not that much on a levee. It's tremendous because of the pressure. As the water builds higher on the levees, there's a hydrostatic pressure. It's exponential. It's very similar to when you dive to the bottom of an 8-foot swimming pool and you feel the pressure on your ears. It's happening to a levee. The higher that water goes, the more that water is trying to push through that levee, go for holes, piping. That's what causes these failures. So by lowering the stage by up to 3 feet on the Feather River is huge. The other thing it did that we're not really talking about here is it widened that floodplain. That channel is much wider, giving that water a lot more, giving the water a lot more room to go. Other benefits of this project: expanded ecological preserves and floodways. That's still ongoing right now. We're still trying to figure out what to do with that land. We're working very closely with Three Rivers Levee Improvement Authority. Slide, please. I think this one is probably near and dear to everyone in the room: Marysville levee repairs. So the gray lines, it's kind of hard to see. The gray is what's already been completed. The green is what's underway right now. Actually, it's just wrapping up. That's as you're driving east out of town and on Highway 20, you would have seen this all year, this year and last year. The blue is what's scheduled next, and the orange is in planning. We're working very closely with the city, the Levy Commission, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to make sure this project gets done. This project not only protects 12,000 people, it also protects our region's only level 3 trauma center. When this project is complete, Marysville is expected to have the highest level of protection in the state. Slide, please. Yuba Goldfields levee improvements. These are out, this levee's out Hamilton-Smartville Road toward Beale Air Force Base. Actually, right outside Beale Air Force Base is where it ends. And this was critical to achieving that 200-year level of protection for southern Yuba County. It seems far removed from South Yuba County, from Plumas Lake, but really it was identified as a weak point. If water was to breach through the Goldfields, that's where it would end up, is in Plumas Lake. So this was just done. We are still in the cleanup phase of this. We're working to get it certified, and we're going to transfer it over to RD 784 for maintenance. It's a brand new levee. Slide, please. Multi-partner Hallwood side channel project. This is a removal of 3.2 million cubic yards of sediment from the lower Yuba River. This is going to lower the surface water elevation and the speed of during high water events to reduce stress on the levees. This is out in Hallwood near Tykert. This enhances 157 acres of habitat, and the first of 2 phases are complete. The next phase begins here in a couple months. This is a special project because it's in coordination with Tykert. So all of that aggregate up there that we're removing, Tykert's actually selling it. So they're doing the work essentially at no cost to the county. So summary of projects and investments since 1997. We have 2 ongoing flood risk reduction programs, 13 flood risk reduction projects that are complete or in construction right now, 3 studies underway, 4 projects in planning or design phase, a total of $33 million invested by Yuba Water to leverage $600 million in state and federal funding. And we're not done. Slide, please. Oh, there we go. So looking ahead, real quick, future investments in public safety. You may recall in 1997, there was some controversy over releasing water from New Bullard's Bar, releasing water from Oroville, and working together with DWR. That has since changed with forecast coordinated operations. So this was launched in 2005. This is a program that Yuba Water has with DWR, where we are in constant communication over releases into the rivers to minimize impacts as best as we can downstream. And that's in coordination with the next slide, Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations, FARO. So we are working with the Scripps Institute of Oceanography Center for Western Weather and Water Extremes. It's a mouthful. But what that's really given us, there's the technology out there. We can predict these atmospheric rivers much further in advance. We can see them further out. We have a much better idea of what's happening, what to expect, how much water to expect in Northern California. This is something we're doing in-house, and the benefits include reduced flood risk and potential water supply improvements. Again, I'm the drought guy too, so this is near and dear. And this is all going to fold up into the next thing I'm going to talk about. the new Lloyd's Bar Atmospheric River Control Spillway, the ARC Spillway. We've been calling it the secondary spillway for the last couple of years. We've given it a name. It's the Atmospheric River Control Spillway. Can you play the? It's her. She's so much better at this than I am, so I just like shut it off.
We might have to go with you, Ryan.
Maybe. Oh, I can talk about it, that's for sure. But she does such a good job articulating it, and the graphics, like as much as I try to explain it, this shows really the benefit.
Even though the rest of the year, but a new second spillway is based 31.5 feet lower elevation, forecasted for operating later us to use how much runoff water we expect to flow in advance of the onset. And then do the same. Reducing clutter, additionally during some dry lighting, let's quantum.
I like to play that because often when we talk about this, people seem to they make a correlation with Oroville's second spillway, the auxiliary spillway. This is not that. This is not a backup. This is not an emergency spillway. This is actually, for a lot of intents, would be a primary spillway. We would use this one first. The other thing that we don't talk about in there is that because of where it's situated on the dam, it would create 117,000 additional acre feet of flood storage. Where do you get 117,000 acre feet of flood storage in California these days? Because you're not building a dam. Nobody's building a dam in California anymore. So that's the other thing, is the huge benefit is basically you're building another mini reservoir to flood water. So,
What was the investment in the second spillway?
right now it's at 225 million. So the Yuba Water Agency has invested 11 million to date on the design. So we are actively, I should say aggressively, pursuing grant funds from Cal OES right now. And we also have folks back in Washington that are working with congressional leaders to try to get earmarks for this, and with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We're trying to get it partners wherever we can.
No, that sounds like a great tool. Thank you.
Yep. So again, slide please. This just kind of recaps that. The other takeaway is this project will reduce the downstream water levels by an additional 2 to 3 feet in the Yuba-Sutter region, again, off the levees, and then increases the level of flood protection by another 100 to 300 year levels, depending on where you're at. So this is on top of everything that we just talked about. These are additional protective benefits. Just for the sake of time, slide please. Changing climate, you know, everything we do right now has to have a climate resilience element. It's just the way the state is and what we're working on. And we can demonstrate that. We do snow surveys all the time. Actually, we just went up this week, and we know from our data, the snow is actually, it's rising in elevation. Like the snow is not down as low as it used to be. So that's just going to create more flood and drought events. It's going to be a lot more flashier. Slide, please. So what does this mean for me? The obvious one's not on here, like just public safety. We're safer behind these levees, that's for sure. Lower flood insurance premiums ensures local development can move forward without additional building or permitting costs required in high-risk flood zones. Long-term security for our communities. Obviously, the city of Marysville, but other communities in Yuba County. This is really the agency's primary objective. So in summary, slide please. We're now among the best protected urban areas in the state, thanks to our significant investments by with local and state and federal partners. Atmospheric rivers have caused most floods in Yuba County. Right now, I'm really hoping for an atmospheric river. That would be really nice right about now, but they're not beneficial. And the planned spillway and implementation of forecast-informed reservoir operations will be our most significant investment in public safety since the construction of the dam. I mean, that's a project of this magnitude. And that's it. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. And if there's any questions, I know I'm over time, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Ryan. Appreciate it very much. And the agency is one of our biggest assets as a community, in my opinion. I was curious, though, as you're talking about the increase in the levee protection, the secondary spillway, is there a point where on any of the FEMA designations, flood map designations, anything along those lines?
That's one question I was hoping I wouldn't get asked tonight.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be that guy.
Everybody here may know, or maybe you don't know. What is it? Risk 2.0? We don't know. We have identified in South Yuba County that the levees were miscategorized. The 200-year levees were labeled as 50-year levees, and the 50-year levees, we do have urban or agricultural levees out there that are still 50-year, were identified as 200-year. So maybe that has something to do with it. We're working through that, and we're working really closely with Yuba County on that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sorry, I don't have a better answer. I wish. I live in Yuba County too, and I have flood insurance, so it's.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Through the church, just a quick one. I looked at your map of the ring levee that we have in Marysville and the finished portion of there off of the Simpson Lane. Did that also include the spur that was off that, or did it just the levee wall itself, right?
I know that we have on Simpson Lane. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know that they're looking at the spur on the town on Highway 70.
I saw that on your map. That's an important one. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you on that.
So that's all right. Last question is with the gates that we got in the community, with the levee improvements, the gates change in any form or function? I mean, I closed the gates when I was on the fire department in '97, so I got that any knowledge, but it's something new I got to learn, or is it just?
Are you talking about the gates north of town?
Yeah.
No, I think those will remain the same.
About the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, I guess what'll play into that is what Caltrans intends to do north of town.
Sure.
Yeah, as they do their widening project.
I know we got rid of Gabe and Fifth Street improvement, but there's the train trestles, Finney Junction, things of that sort. So quite sure where we got with those improvements on the maps, or if that's on the planning stage. I think it takes care of it right there.
Yeah, and to address the spur on the north end of town, that's going to fold in. You know, it's all predicated on what Caltrans do, and so that's. I know the Levy Commission and the Corps of Engineers are working closely with Caltrans because Caltrans is committed to doing a lot of that, that part of the project.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is, Ryan, are there any other dams in the state that you're aware of that have implemented a similar measure to modulate the flow of water with gain more control over the flow? In other words, is there a success model you're following, or are you the first?
I hate to answer that too. I believe we're the first. A lot more different dams have different mechanisms for releasing water, low level outlets. Unfortunately, ours at New Bullard's Bar is so small, we just can't evacuate water. Our water is released through the Colgate powerhouse.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. All right, no further questions. Thank you very much,
Right.
sir.
Thank you so
Excellent.
much, everybody. I appreciate
and
it.
We always thank the Yuba Water Agency.
Thanks. Thank you.
Madam Finance Director. Have a presentation by Jennifer Styczynski, our Finance Director, for a 6-month financial review, so we can get a sense of where we stand 6 months into the current fiscal year. Thank you.
Yep. So good evening, Mayor and council members. So tonight is a review of financial position as December 31st of 2021. We will be bringing back supplemental appropriations or changes to the budget in 2 weeks of the next council meeting. That's when we'll have it for discussion. And if we have any individual line items that we need to adjust, those will be coming back at this time. This is just to give you an overview where we're at prior to that discussion, so that you can see where our expenses and our revenue is currently heading. Just to let you know, this report is done on a cash basis, which means that revenue is recognized when it's received and expenses are always recognized when they're actually expended. So next slide. So I kept these slides pretty full so that I can have some discussions of what I'm showing you. So this is just a quick overview of our general fund. So obviously the general fund is the primary operational fund of the city. If we look at the top slide, what I'm showing here is what's in blue is what we received to date or we spent to date, depending if you're looking at revenue or expense. And then the orange number is the total that's in the budget. So for revenue, we have a budget amount of 12.68 million. We've brought in $6 million to date, as of December. And expenditures, we have a $13.19 million budget, and we have expended 6.98%. So I do want to point out, we'll go in some overview a little bit deeper on some of the items in further slides. And on this first slides, I do want to mention that when we're looking at the revenue at $6 million, that does include 1.54 million that we have received in ARPA funds, or what you want to call the coronavirus state and local recovery funds. This is half of the funding that we're receiving from the federal government for the COVID relief that's out there. This is the item that we're going to be bringing back to council once we receive further guidance from the federal government of how we can use it and what our reporting is going to be. But that is why normally at this point of the year, we would be around 35% of our revenues brought in. Right now, we're sitting at 47.3% due to this extra $1.5 million that has come in this September. So we're looking, if we take that 1.5 million out, again, we're at 35.2%, which is on target and on track of where we would normally be at this point in the fiscal year.
Briefly, can you explain, it looks like, what is it, about $350,000 more in
as GAAP,
Recording
as it
in
looks right
progress.
now. But once those revenues come in, then we'll do the budget adjustment. So we'll have our original and then we'll have our adjusted budget. So the difference pretty much will be the 266,000 that was approved with labor negotiations and then the management. So,
Thank you.
but I am tracking that because I knew that you were going to ask about the versus the amended budget. So I do have further numbers for that. So to date, our actual expenses are 6.98 million out of our 13.19 million that are budgeted. So right now we spent around 52.9% of our expenses, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in another slide. So we'll go to next. So this is just an overview of our revenue that's come in. So the items listed right here are the top 4 revenue producers that the city has. And it counts for about 75.2% of our overall general fund that's coming in. So even though we are under the 50% mark, again, it is expected because a lot of our revenue that comes in the city between July and August is accrued back during the audit period. I mean, I know we do cash basis, but we do have to accrue those back. So a lot of we're looking at sales as a good example. We've brought in around 34%. We do bring it in on a monthly basis. However, this only reflects 4 months, not 6 months, because our July and August payments went back to the prior fiscal year. So we've brought in a third, and we're about a third of our way through of revenue coming in, and we've brought in a third of the revenue. So there's a 2-month lag time on this. So it looks like we're behind on sales tax revenue coming in, but we're actually 2 months behind on payments being received by the city. Same with our property taxes. So the property taxes is showing at 0.66 million when we're projecting around 2.42. So what happens with the county is we get 2 large installment payments, normally in December and then May, June. This year we received our property taxes in December, but our taxes, vehicle and LUA fees from your licenses actually came in January. So the revenue came in, it just came in after that point. So if we're looking at what we expected to get for the first installment, the revenue has been received and we still are on track. It just is depending on when actual revenues come in. Again, it's when we receive them, not for the time period it's covering. Franchise fees is another one that we brought in around 121,000 of our $544,000 budget. Big thing is PG&E. They their franchise fee is in once a year, and it comes in April, so we have not received that. All the other ones are done on quarters, but we've only received the first quarter. The second quarter is January. So as we're looking at that forecast, we're still bringing in those revenues on the timely basis that we expected to see. With cannabis tax, we brought in around $400,000 out of our $840,000 budget. This is a 5 months of our amount because what we brought in July went back. So we are tracking slightly ahead. Right now we're 47.8%. We are tracking to be ahead of our original budget of $840,000. And so that will be one in the next meeting that I'll be bringing for mid-year budget to actually be putting in a budget adjustment as this revenue's gone up. We were very conservative when we budgeted this amount because we weren't sure if this was the first full year that we've seen both dispensaries have our adult use and our medical use. And so we weren't sure if there was the COVID increase, but we've actually have enough history that we can look back for a year and a half and see that it's actually starting to stable out. We have some increases and some decreases, but we're pretty much receiving the same income average now. So now we can better put our budget in, and I'm more comfortable to come back and say, yes, we will receive this because we actually have the history that we did not have in past years.
If I may, before we move on. So these are the components of the 12.68 million forecast revenue.
These are this is 75% of that, so these are our largest.
So the sales tax, as I recall, the Measure C component of that is about 3.5 million. It was last year, I think, or 3.4.
I think it's around 3.4, correct?
3.4. So of the 5.74 million of sales tax revenue, 3.4 is Measure C.
Correct.
And Measure C sunsets in 2026.
Correct. So we're currently working on bringing that back.
As it would take more than a magic wand to come up with a replacement for that. So something's going to have to be done in terms of extending that. What about the cannabis tax? It was isn't this the number last year, 840,000?
That's what we currently have budgeted in there is 840,000, but we're on track to probably bring around at least 950,000 in this current fiscal year.
So it's tracking higher.
Correct,
And
but it has stabilized out, so I don't expect that to keep on jumping higher. I mean,
no, I understand.
Yeah.
And if there's a risk profile attached to that, and that's when you add in the Measure C component compared into that, it's about $1 million total.
correct.
So that revenue, which out of 1 million-ish out of 12.68 is very significant. And it is a little bit at risk should, for example, a competitor come in a neighboring jurisdiction and cannibalize the revenue in Marysville. And that's worthy of, we should be aware of that as a risk element in the revenue line. Thank you.
You're welcome. So also attached to this was a 5-page overall report that was included in the packet that went through a lot more detail than what I'm giving here. I do want to say that even though I didn't list it here, it's on. If you look to the intergovernmental revenues on the, there's a chart on the first page. It actually is saying that we brought in 3.1% of that. That is pretty much all grant based. And right now we have spent money on grants, but we have to get reimbursements after the fact. Most of our grants are taking anywhere from 2 to 5 months to be able to get reimbursements for. So we're actually starting to see some of the grant reimbursements coming in this month. But if we put a grant reimbursement in August, we may have not have seen that. So that's why that is actually showing at a much lower amount, is just due to the lag time on actually getting money back. Most of it's from the state. I actually had the Department of Water Resources today call me because we sent in a grant reimbursement request in July and October, and we have not received it. And he let me know he finally got authorization last week to release the funds. He's putting in the request, which is probably going to be another month or two. So there is a lot of holdup, especially within state departments on reimbursements. So that's why that one's showing at 3%, where obviously if we're looking at a few more months, it's going to be, the revenue will start to come in. That is also one, especially with grants, that when we do the audit, we have a 6-month look back. So even when we get to the budget season, we may look like we're only at 70% of our grants, but we may receive a lot of those in July, August, September, even November that will accrue back into the current fiscal year. So that one still is a moving target when we're working through the audit. But overall, our revenues are either projecting on track or a few of them are above, like cannabis, that we'll be bringing back to and asking for a budget adjustment in those. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, please.
If I may, at this point, I don't see the police department on this list, and I've got to believe it's one of the top general fund expenditures.
So they are, and I actually added them into my notes because when I looked at this, I realized I just did them in alphabetical order, as you could tell. So the fire department and the police department budget, I picked the top 5, which are basically at 50% or above. The fire department's at 51.3%, I mean, just over, and the police department is actually at 47.1%. So
Percent of what?
Of their overall expenses for the year. So 6 months into it, that's where they've spent about half their budgets.
Okay, but you're listing, what is public safety in total? In other words, fire department plus police department. Because I don't see police department here, and it clearly belongs on a list of top fund expenditures.
So what I was doing on that was not how much their budget was how much of their, how much they've spent for the current year. So if a person has a large budget, but they've only spent 30% of their budget, they had not made this list. But I can do something in the future if you do want to see the overall top budgets versus, it was a little different way of a presentation.
It's a glowing omission in my mind, but proceed.
Okay. So talking about the police department and the fire department, like I said, the fire department's at 51.3, the police department is at 47.1% of expenditures. The reason I bring both of those up is there is more in overtime that has been spent in this fiscal year, either due to overtime costs because of vacancies, backfills, sickness. So that is one of the items during mid-year. There's not a lot to bring forth, but we will be bringing forth a budget request for both of these departments as we evaluate their overtime usage. The other reason for that is during the budget season is now every year we have these same issues with sick people out, vacancies, backfills, vacancies, is that we do need to look at increasing the overtime budget for possibly both of these units in next fiscal year or staffing levels. So it kind of leads into that conversation of staffing levels and overtime, looking at future fiscal years.
Through the chair.
Please.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I get what you're saying that the top general fund expenditures, for instance, the fire department's at 47% of their complete budget being 2.37. Is that what I'm reading correctly here?
Correct. So they spent, 1.2 million of their total budget.
Which is the 51%. And I think maybe I'm missing what the mayor was trying to get at. But what I'm thinking is that we're at 47% of the police department's budget, but what is their total budget? Thank you, Jennifer. So I get what you're saying that the top general fund expenditures, for instance, the fire department's at 47% of their complete budget being 2.37. Is that what I'm reading correctly here?
Oh, the one that I brought, sorry, is actually broken down in a different way. So their budget is.
Maybe I'm missing what the mayor was trying to get at, but what I'm thinking is.
I'm trying to remember what their actual
47% of the police
budget number is.
What is
Their total is right around 3 million. Oh, sorry for that. So the overall police department budget is just over $3 million, and they've spent 1.45 million.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I brought so many sheets for questions that I grabbed the wrong one, so I do have that here. But I will take that to note of how to do the presentation future years. We can do it by of larger budgets. I will take the note for that. So the other one I wanted to point out, like general debt, I brought that one forth because it is sitting around 70% of the total budget for the year. This is just because all payments are made in accordance with our amortization schedules. We're not over budget on that. It just depends on when actual payments are scheduled. Most of them are done twice a year. So normally in the beginning part of the half is when we do a principal and interest payment. The second part of the half is when we do an interest payment. So that's why we see a greater expense in the first half of the year. Under HR, this is kind of a big one I wanted to bring forth. We are about 89.7% of our total budget of $1.66 million. In the HR budget, the largest expense is our unfunded liability payment that we refunded in 2019. We paid, that payment is in July, so we make that payment in the beginning, plus also made our current obligations for the entire year, which was $38,000. So we have the bond payment plus current obligations of $38,000. Those were made in July. Plus we've also made half workers' comp payments. So we're not looking to go over budget in this category. We just happen to have 8% of our budget or 9% of our budget spent because those expenses were large at that time. And then in IT, we're also showing that we've spent 56.9%. Again, that is due to the fact that at the beginning of the fiscal year, we pay for a lot of our software up front. We pay for our firewalls up front. A lot of our large expenses done. So this was to kind of show that even though some of the budgets, it looks like we're going to go over, we've just actually done a lot of one-time expenses in the beginning of the fiscal year. But overall, we're on track for the current overall. And then it's not listed on here, but is if we look at the public works, admin budget, building and fleet, those are tracking between 28 and 42%. The reason those are under budget is we have vacancies. So either we have a frozen position as a public works director, or we have active recruitments for the building inspector, which is a current active recruitment's been vacant, and a fleet mechanic, which I found out is starting in, I believe, 2 weeks. So we've had that position vacant for September, probably about 4 or 5 months. So there is a savings there due to vacancy savings. Is there any other questions on basically the review of the general fund expenditures. Any other department you wanted to have a question on?
To the chair, I got a quick question. I just kind of a little bit confused back to the police and fire budgets. You don't have readily available the budget that passed, do you? Last July or last June? Because I recall when we were looking at that, I recall that the two budgets were within like $100,000 or $200,000 of each other. No, just the overall budget rate, the department, et cetera. And so when I heard 3 million, I was a little bit taken back. I thought they were closer in budgets. No? Okay. Well,
No, they.
never mind then.
I do have. So the only adjustment that has been made to both of those budgets are salaries when we passed the labor negotiations. We haven't been doing adjustments unless it went to council for, like the fire department bought some SCBA's recently through a grant, and it went to council for I don't remember the exact amount, I think $30,000-$40,000 for some SCBA's. That increase is in there. And then what was through labor negotiations. There's been no other adjustments to those budgets unless it came to council.
Just one more clarification.
Okay.
Why was the PD not considered in the top expenditures when it's our first biggest budget?
I had done this by, if we looked at everybody's percentages of how much they've spent in their budget, basically if you're at 50% or above, that's when I put you on here, not your overall budget. I can see the point that you would like to see.
Clarification should be that this is top general fund expenditures by percentage of their budget.
That would have been a better way to label it.
I think we can come up with a better way to describe that and include, because I think what council would like to see, if I'm correct, is the largest budgets by department, and then how much they've expended within those budgets and the percentage of where they're at within those budgets. So we can tweak that chart.
If I may, this is the first time in my experience, and I'd asked about whether when I joined the council as mayor, I asked if there were regular updates during the year so we could have a sense of where we stand. If things are going the wrong way or the right way, it's nice to know partway through the year rather than at the end of the year when there's no chance to make course corrections, if you will. The objective, at least the objective I have in mind, is quarterly updates along these lines so that we have a good sense of what the pulse is in terms of revenues and expenditures. So this is a first time, and every first time usually requires a little bit of an adjustment. We can make an adjustment as we go forward. Thank you, John.
We can bring back the next quarter.
Yeah, proceed.
Yep, we can definitely put something together for that. Are there any other questions on expenses for the general fund? Okay, so we're also going to do a quick overview of the gas tax fund and the wastewater fund. So next slide. So this is basically our budget to actual for our gas tax fund. It is also known as our street fund. We're required to have this fund here to expend revenues that we receive between highway, the HUDA tax, highway user tax, and SB1 funds for road purposes, and it's subject to an annual audit by the state controller's office. So therefore it does have its own separate fund. If we're looking at the top line, the highway user tax or HUDA, it's at 48%. So this one is actually, we receive the funds on the correct month. So there's no lag time on this one. So this one is on track. We brought in 48% of what we expect to bring in. It's not a flat amount that we receive on a monthly basis, but it's still projecting to be on track by the end. The one right below it, though, is RMRA, which is Road Maintenance Rehabilitation Account, or as you guys know, is SB1 funding. It is at 33.8%. The reason this one is that way is because there's a 2-month lag time on this one. So as the state brings funding in, this is the one that for some reason, they give us about 2 months behind. So if we're looking at that at 33% and we're third of the way through. We're still on track with that. Just to let you know, just as an update, because we just did some street projects, we have about $148,500 remaining in our SB1 funds for future projects. And this is after the street project we just did, the B Street, First Street, and F Street resurfacing project that we finished in November. So we've brought in around $844,000 in SB1 funds since it started in one date I didn't write down. I think it was 2018. And we have spent $696,000 to date. So that's not on the chart, but I just wanted to let you know that's we've spent basically $700,000 on two street projects, and we're rebuilding that fund up. And again, we have around $148,000. We normally bring in between $20,000 and $25,000 per month. That will just keep on accruing into that account till we have enough to do our next SB1 project. That's okay. I'll wait and see if you have a question.
Please, I was trying to get an explanation. I'll ask you. So we show revenues on the gas tax revenues, correct?
Correct.
588-ish. Okay, and then you're showing expenses here of 872,000.
Yes. So the reason.
Tell me about that.
So the reason why for that one is that was a little bit farther on is in our gas tax fund is where our SB1 fund live, for our street funds for road projects. So you're seeing that the net transfers is 110,000. So what happens is the general fund has to contribute $289,000 from the general fund.
Pardon me, net transfers, what's that?
So that's all I'll explain. So the general fund puts $289,000 a year. We required our maintenance of effort into the street fund. So that normally shows as a negative. When we did our projects, because the SB1 funds sit in the street fund, we have to transfer it out into a capital fund to pay for the street projects. So it's transferring funds that are currently sitting in a fund balance in the street fund, and we have to transfer it into a capital project fund to be able to pay for the street project that we just did.
Okay, let me see if I understand that.
That's
the 872,000 spend is what we're spending on street maintenance repairs?
No, 872,000 is the overall total for this year.
Just an overall total of what?
Of what was spent out of the gas tax fund for this current fiscal year, or is what we're expecting to spend out. So we had a fund balance of just over $1 million in the street fund. And then when we did a street project, we basically paid for it out of a different account, and we're just transferring into that different account.
So there's a beginning balance.
Correct.
The beginning balance had the 585 added to it, and we're spending this, and we still have a balance when we're done. Is that correct?
Correct. We do have a balance in that.
I think it would be important to show that number too in future presentations. Thank you.
So in that, we do show that salaries and benefits is tracking under, and that's also, again, because we've had vacancies in the street department. We have recently, between streets and parks, we have hired those positions. So moving forward, they'll be on track, but there will be some current salary savings due to a few vacancies that we had within the maintenance department there. And then on the other one, service and supplies, we're showing around 33%. This is normal this time of the year because a lot of our projects that we do in streets are going to come as weather gets nicer, March, April, streets, tree trimming. So if we were showing at around 50-60%, then we would need to come back with a budget adjustment, because obviously we're going to start doing more projects in the springtime. So this, even though it's showing under, it's purposely supposed to be showing under so that we have the funding to be able to do any projects or emergencies that come up during that time. And then next slide.
Okay, one question before you go forward. So we budgeted that there were in those transfers that you're talking about, the 110,000.
Correct.
That was the budget for the year. So we've transferred the whole budgeted amount, right? In this first 6 months, we've already moved that whole 110 because you've got it at 100%.
Correct. We have done the full transfer. What it is this general fund is transferred in, it's $289,000, and then we've transferred out the 490,000 to cover the street project we just did.
No, I get that. So where did the 110 come from?
It's the net of the two, because normally with the transfer coming in, it would actually show as a negative under transfers because we'd be putting more money into the street fund than what we're expending. But because we did the street project, you have the money coming in and the money coming out. So we've transferred more out than what we transferred in from the general fund. So
everything we have in any other accounts that we're holding have all been transferred now, correct?
Correct. Unless we do a project this year, but I don't see another SB1 project coming in this fiscal year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So when it comes to transfers, we do them at the beginning of the fiscal year. So we may have something scheduled on the books for a transfer, and especially like a maintenance of effort that we have to do on a yearly basis. We'll transfer that in July at the beginning of the fiscal year. So that is always 100% expended at the beginning of the year, instead of waiting to the end of the year and going, oops, we forgot to do it, and dealing with it during the audit. So if we go to the next slide, this is the enterprise fund, or as what we call the wastewater fund. Again, this is a standalone fund, so it's all revenues are used on the operation, the maintenance, and capital improvement that come in. So sewer services, we're showing right now around 52.9%. Right now, there's a 1 month lag time, so this is 5 months. So we're actually tracking ahead of where we thought we would be with sewer revenue services. So this would be one area that we're looking at that we're actually, when I looked back at it, I realized that we underestimated the revenue that was going to be coming into this account this year, re-looking back at numbers. And we probably should have adjusted this around $300,000 more than what originally went to the council for budget. So this will be one during the mid-year review that we're going to bring back and say, we are projecting at a higher amount and we would like to do an increase. Again, with this fund, it stays within it. So whatever's not spent in this current fiscal year stays with the enterprise fund and just rolls into future years into fund balance.
So if I understand correctly, there is a previous balance of assets.
Correct. So you would like to see that.
Off the top of your head, do you know what that is?
It was around $500,000 because that balance was pretty low, but with the renegotiation.
And then the budget is to add 3.6 to that against 3.1 in spend.
Correct.
And it's an enterprise fund, which is enterprise funds are different from a general fund. They are more like a business. Airports are enterprise funds. Sewer services are usually enterprise funds. So, and the reason for having a surplus is because there's capital expenditures that need to be made to upgrade sewer systems and what have you.
Correct.
And so we're building a nest egg for doing that.
Correct, is necessary. And since in the past we were running it almost at a break-even point until we renegotiated. Yeah, correct. We don't like to hear that. Yeah. So we're building it back up. So right now we're very, very reactive in this fund. As we build an actual reserve in it, then we can start putting money in the budget every year for proactive and actually start building with our infrastructure and fixing things while still keeping a fund balance in that account where we have it in the future. So this allows us to be a proactive approach with our enterprise fund instead of a reactive. Because right now, if something breaks and it's not within our budget, then we're going to have to come to council and say, you know, a $200,000 pipe just collapsed. We need to get it repaired.
Thank you. Any other questions, Vice Mayor?
Just curious what the other revenues, what makes up that 102,000 when you budgeted 15? I think I missed something there. I mean, you're at 685%.
I didn't write down. Let me see if I wrote a note on it. If not, I'll write a note down and I will get back to you with that and let you know at mid-year.
I mean, that's.
I realize I did not write a note on that. So let me find out and let me bring that back at mid-year and I'll be able to tell you exactly what that is. I'd rather give you what it is instead of guess of what it is.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other questions? No other questions. Thank you very much, Jennifer. We are now moving to the community and consent calendar forum. I have a paragraph to read here. Individuals wishing to address the City Council concerning consent calendar items or on matters not already on the agenda are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. If you would like to comment and you're attending this meeting in person, please complete a speaker's card and return that card to the city clerk. When called upon, go to the podium to address the council. If you're participating in Zoom and would like to speak, please raise your hand via Zoom. When you're called upon by the clerk, city clerk, you will be unmuted and you can address the council. Whether you are here in person or attending via Zoom, when called upon, please give your name clearly for audio recording. You're requested to address your comments to the council and not to the audience. By state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentation you'd like to share with the council, please send it to City Clerk, C Street, Marysville, 95901. And I presume any matter, Madam Clerk, I presume any speaker who wanted to speak to 9 could also speak now.
This section is specifically reserved for those on the agenda.
I can't hear a word you're saying.
This public comment is subject to items that are on the agenda or not on the agenda. So if you choose to hear them now or on item 9, that is correct.
But if someone had come in and just put in a card for item number 9, and item number 9 is not going to be discussed, could they be called upon now?
I will defer to council.
Yes. Okay. Proceed. Do we have any members of the public who wish to make comment?
Yes, our first speaker will be Charles Sharp. He's attending via Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Charles Sharp from Oregon House. I would like to reiterate how important the secondary spillway is the Yuba Water Agency wants to build. It's should be called the Keep Marysville from Flooding Spillway, because it will help manage the water coming down and keep the pressure lower on the levees, and therefore keep Marysville hopefully from flooding ever again. So I just wanted to add that emphasis. You know, it's something critical. The water agency has to build that spillway. They really have no choice. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Sorry, deferring council. Do I allow the public who wish to comment on item 9 speak now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Our second speaker will be Barbara Brown.
Welcome, Barbara. It's so good to see you at a council meeting. There's a button you need to press on the, we need to get your microphone working here. Pardon me.
Oh.
There you go. Thank you.
I'm not used to this sort of thing. I just wanted to talk, just say something about the expenditure for the number 9 here. That's $60,000 for just a study. And I know the Marysville Council has had other studies, and nothing's ever seemed to come of the recommendations that were made. I'm specifically talking about the B Street property, for a huge grant was given to, or a huge contract was given to somebody for a feasibility study on the B Street property. And it was, I was here when it was presented, and it was just never acted on at all. And this is $60,000. You guys are smart enough to figure that out yourself, I would think. It just seems like an awful lot of money for this dispatch thing. And I would like to know what this second appropriation is of $24,000 for professional services. That's on top of the $24,000. What does that mean?
We're not permitted.
On number 9, it says
number 9.
For $34,000 for the contract, and then there's an additional appropriation of $24,000.
I think that can be answered. We're not. This isn't discussion. Please go ahead.
clarification, the $60,000 estimate is to move fire dispatch to the county. That's the estimate that it would take to do that for a year. The $24,000 is an amount that is needed to fund a consulting agreement to look at the feasibility of consolidating dispatch for the region, and that $24,000 would be added to a $10,000 amount already in the budget for a total of $34,000 roughly to do that analysis. So those are the two items. They're two separate and distinct items.
But expenditure for the same thing, right?
They are not the same thing. The first item is to just simply move fire to the county for dispatch service at $60,000. And the second item is a $34,000 consulting agreement to study consolidation of dispatches throughout the region.
Well, it just seems like it's a lot of money that we could be spending someplace else, like maybe Bryant Field for the rest of that fence. And it just seems like it's an awful lot of money for expenditure for the city to spend. We don't have that much money to spend. And it just seems like it's a big expenditure. And I just wanted to find out about it.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Okay,
Appreciate it very much. Good to see you. Madam Clerk.
Our last speaker on the comment will be Helen Perkins.
Welcome, Helen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Helen Perkins, and I am a resident and business owner in East Marysville. This subject about dispatch has already been addressed at least 2 to 3 times before. Study done. I remember when Chief Wally Fullerton was with Marysville, again when Chief Aaron Easton was with Marysville. This was addressed, it was the subject. It is just not cost effective. I had the pleasure of talking with my neighbor, former Yuba County Sheriff, Steve Durford, yesterday. These areas would cost and lots of dollars. Startup costs include system compatibility, combining Marysville Police Department system with Yuba County Sheriff system to be compatible. Who employs and sues these employees? All records and the accessibility of records for officers, especially in different locations. Most traffic and accidents for Yuba County Sheriff's Office are done by California Highway Patrol. Marysville does their own. Lots of these are federal mandates. These are all additional costs to Marysville. I then had the pleasure of speaking with our current sheriff, Wendell Anderson. He didn't even know this was on the agenda. He didn't even know this subject was up for discussion again. He discussed staffing issues. They didn't need more work. It's a different system for records. This involves their IT division and more costs. He did mention they could probably handle Marysville Fire Department since they handle Linda Fire Department. This is just a total waste of our taxpayers' money for another consultant to do the same study that has been done and cost us for times. Our city manager prepared a thorough analysis in October of 2021 with the same outcome, more expenses and no cost savings. This is a total waste of time and money. There is no cause for this action, and you are being irresponsible with our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Madam Clerk.
We have one more speaker, Tom McWhorter.
welcome, Tom. You bet. Microphone's on, just step up and speak.
Sure, and I don't bite hard, so. My name's Tom McWhorter. I live in Olivehurst. I'm an incorporated part of Yuba County. I just became aware of the item agenda item number 9 last night. And as I have learned, not just tonight, but last night also, this proposal was looked at several years in the past. I probably may have been aware of it at that time. I was busy raising a family, working out of the area, being a productive citizen, trusting that my elected and other officials who were able to work more closer to their place of residence, taking care of business. I have a couple of questions for the City Council of Marysville. What has changed in the last 8 years that you have to now come up with another way to provide the residents of Marysville with law enforcement capability? Not by yourself, but by dragging in another agency to economically make it work for Marysville, okay? Because I don't see how myself as a resident of Yuba County can benefit from this. I see city benefiting from the county agreeing to this, but what do the residents of Yuba County receive out of this proposal if it were to bear fruit, to blend the sheriff's and the police department of Marysville into one unit? As it's already been explained, you've got 2 different complete operating systems. You've done studies. I understand that there is a push to get another study done on this matter from a second opinion. And that's not a bad idea, okay? We do look at the cost of it and say, oh my gosh, $60,000, that's crazy, okay? But, you know, if I had a bump coming out of my head and the first guy says, oh, just go on vacation, you got 3 days left, I'm gonna say, no, I want a second opinion, okay? So it's a very good idea to have a second opinion. Well, why are you guys in this position where you're shrinking your, what you're providing your citizens of Marysville? And in order to keep it going, law enforcement, you've got to attempt to with Yuba County. I don't see a plus from it, at least from my side of the equation. As a resident of the unincorporated part of the county, I would, you know, if presented with this, I would vote no. But again, how does Yuba County residents benefit from this? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
No further speakers.
Okay, I asked council if I could make a comment on this as an individual citizen. As I said earlier, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion. So this isn't discussion. This is just me standing up as a citizen on this topic. The consulting firm that is under consideration has presented a proposal, and they present their qualifications. And they have been, I understand they have been asked, and when they do that, like all proposals, you present references. They're probably happy customers of their services. I understand they have been asked for a list of all recipients of their services over the last 5 years so that we could pick and choose and maybe identify the ones not on their reference list and ask them, how did it go? They responded, you've seen our proposal, that's the only information we're going to share with you, which is discouraging at this point and something for concern before spending $35,000. I have other thoughts on this matter, but that one is a threshold consideration, I think, before taking steps, and I'd suggest that to the council. Anyway, and I'll go back to wearing my mayor hat now. Okay, we are through with the community consent calendar, community calendar and forum. And I know the council appreciates all of the participation at that on that level. Let's see, the consent calendar. I've got a sentence to read here. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine, therefore approved by one motion unless a council member or the city manager first requests that a matter be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. What is the will of the council?
To the chair.
Sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 1 through 7.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
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 There we go. Okay, and I've been encouraged to allow for a brief intermission at this point. And so we'll take about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, then we'll return to our business.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
The first executive governing board meeting. Again, minutes, calendars, standing ad hoc committees, who participates in what. The two that I continue to be are on the federal affairs and local advocacy. One area that we really, which I found impressive with RWA, is that they have a strategic plan review. So this plan is a 3-year plan, and there are it's graded by color in the sense of the progress of activities. And so I find that to be very effective, because then the executive board is able to give input to the executive director and the team to agree or not agree on the progress of the work. Other discussion like we have here, staffing, retention, and good staffing is hard to find. So we discussed about the executive team and position reclassifications to retain good staff and bring them up to par, as we just did with our own staff here in the city. On the Regional Water Authority Federal Affairs, one topic that was a big topic that I find a theme across the committees and us here is the regional coordination. How do we do regional coordination? How do we also understand what you have going compared to what we have going? Are we competing? Are we non-competing? Are we supporting? Are we not? So that was a big discussion in the affairs, because of all these federal funds that are coming in, federal funds, state funds, and we don't want to jeopardize those regional collaborative partners that we have in receiving some of these funds. So there was a fact sheet that was distributed at our workshop on the Build a Better American fact sheet on infrastructure, which has a lot of information. We also talked about the WIN Act funding for water bank in the region, big topic of discussion in more of the Sacramento region area. Two other things in the city that we've all experienced, which was the funding workshop that Spencer and his team did. Amazing workshop, really good information. PowerPoint was better the second time, thank you. And then we did a Teams workshop, and that was fantastic, working with all of our executive team members in our council. Adding to Aqua, one other committee is that I've been also appointed by President Tobin and Vice President Kathy Green on the Agriculture Committee, which is going to be fun because there's a lot of local representation, but there hasn't been from the city. So that'll be an addition to the other committees that I'm working on. And as Diana, our city manager, said, I genuinely I know that they're not in the room here with us virtually. I know people will catch up sometimes and watch these things when they're trying to fall asleep late, in another moment. But I just sincerely want to say thank you to each of you as the executive team. But I also understand the city staff and each of our departments. We are just better because of your dedication, your service, and your work. There's no end to that. I just want you to know that I sincerely appreciate all that, even though I am not physically being able to bounce around from different departments and say hi and share that appreciation for all of you. I do want to kind of highlight one department a little bit tonight. I just haven't had as much of this highlighting, and that's the gentleman in our corner back there. I just want to say a special thank you to Chief Brian Baker. I'm impressed with how you're moving forward in your new position. I have seen how the Yuba City Policing, from our dispatching to detective work and anyone in between, I've seen firsthand how the community policing is working, how you're making those adjustments, and your leadership is moving in that direction, your responsiveness and your strength and your loyalty to protecting our community. I see that from you as a leader, and I'm seeing that from the department and the staffing. So I just want to say thank you so much for all of those things that you've done in the recent weeks and before, but recently I've seen more of that, and I just wanted to say thank you to you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Bloomgren.
All right. My one committee that I had an opportunity to participate in was the Sutter County Children's and Families Commission. This was my first meeting, which is led by Michelle Blake, who's one of our planning commissioners. And they were running through a study and research, and the amount of outreach that this organization is doing is really phenomenal. I was really blown away. This was followed up with a meeting with the city manager, myself, with Michelle, in regards to, how can we continue to partner and use the synergies of the city with the Sutter County Children's and Families Commission. So you'll see some stuff coming up in regards to outreach. And this is really age 0 to age 5 is really what their focus is on. And that's a critical age, especially right now with what's going on with COVID. But thank you, Mayor, for appointing me to that committee. I knew what their mission was, but boy, I tell you what, I'm super impressed with how they're doing their business, and kudos to Michelle and her staff. Did attend the funding workshop, and I want to thank city staff for the funding workshop. I would highlight a few things coming out of that, and I think the message from our city manager was, hey, look, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're interested in requesting funds from the city, we're in the process now of getting going with our budgeting process, and now's the time to kind of put your packages together and submit them. You don't want to miss the opportunity. And I would piggyback with that. I know we received an email from Mr. Moody in regards to CDBG. That process is going to be rolling out as well. They did an outstanding job last year of outreach to the community. I'm sure that they'll be doing the same again. But this is opportunities not only for the public, but for us to provide resources to our community. Did attend the team building effort with the city council and discuss some futuring for the city. Thought it was very valuable. I know we have another meeting coming up. Continually impressed with not only the executive team, but our team engaged with, trying to continue to move the city forward. It's challenging times, but you know what? We continue to keep the doors open. I definitely acknowledge the efforts of our city staff. There's a lot of staffing issues going on in all the departments regards to COVID, and just keeping the services being delivered is a big deal. So kudos to the staff, kudos to the leadership, kudos to the folks that are delivering the services. I have a regional housing authority meeting tomorrow. Looking forward to that. I have First League of Cities Policy Committee on Transportation, Public Works, and Communications. Looking forward to accessing more information about how we may tap into fundings for that. And finally, looking forward, I know we haven't necessarily established a date for this, but given everything that I've been hearing in the community in regards to homeless is getting that homeless workshop on board when we can, to continue outreach to the community, but also develop whatever strategies and plans that we can continue to foster as a city. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I had an introduction to the leadership team at Sabufka. They had lots of questions. I had lots of questions, and I look forward to that relationship in the next year. There's a lot of exciting opportunities there. I attended the funding workshop as well. I'd like to thank staff for their efforts in getting us up to speed on what's going on with the funding available to us. The mayor and I attended an intergovernmental committee meeting, and I'll tell you, going to Councilperson Baumgartner's point, the bulk of the meeting was about the homeless, and so there was a lot of great ideas that were being discussed between the city and the county. A lot of stuff that I hadn't thought of, and so I'm excited the direction the city and the county are going with that. In closing, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but something that was brought up earlier with the districting, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier when we were discussing that, was in the last meeting we did have a card where there was concern about the boundaries between 3 and 4. And if you remember back to the green map and the purple map, both those maps are very similar except for that border. And so the individuals that were concerned about that were concerned because in their estimation, it broke up neighborhoods, which is not the intent of these laws. And so that council meeting, we had our city attorney and we had a demographer here. And the demographer addressed that issue by saying, District 4 is pretty heavy anyways. And that's why you've got that strange looking line down the middle. So, and that's probably a layman's term of explaining it. He explained it a lot better than I did. But the point is, those lines are there and they're there for a reason because they make sense. And they're there to protect us and the people that we represent.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, a lot has been going on with my role in serving the city. We'll start with the Transit Authority. As I reported earlier, the new vice chair of Yuba-Sutter Transit is our vice mayor. He served the previous year as an alternate and filled in a few meetings, so he was able to make that transition. And with RWMA and Transit, there was a request that we put out last year because there's so many big projects going on to keep as much consistency with those boards as possible. So I was glad that he was able to step in and do that. The best news that we had under Transit, and I think we all got the emails on it, was the Regional Housing Authority's project at Richland is getting approved. And the good news for Transit is that was $8 million built into that to go to the Transit Authority in building their new $40 million facility. So that was the huge first drop in the bucket there. There are many other grant applications that are out right now and in the process of being submitted for transit. They are, it's kind of like voting. It's your frequent and often, you know, as a Chicago style, as I call it. So they're applying for all the grants, and we should be hearing word on a few more grants here in the next month or so. The other thing with transit is it hasn't recovered since COVID hit. Ridership is still down, but they are still providing a service, and ridership kind of hit its plateau, and it is just maintaining steady. RWMA, the biggest thing that's going on there is, of course, changing of the chairs, but then we have actually started the active recruitment for the new executive to serve the RWMA. For those of you that may not know, in the past, the executive for transit and his team and the executive for RWMA and that team are one and the same. They just share resources and do that. But with the amended JPA and everything that's going on, they started the recruitment for their own executive to be over RWMA. The Intergovernmental Relations Committee that we serve on. IRC, I got to call it that. I like that. The IRC. So the IRC's first meeting was really good. It occurred with great timing because they had just changed over their chair and vice chair on Tuesday, and we met on Thursday. The biggest accomplishments there right out of the chute was finding out what all was going on being discussed that we as a council had no clue that had been going on over the past 10, 11 months. Wasn't as many things as we thought, but one of the big ones was the homeless issue. We have heard often from the county that they want us to give money to this and give money to that, but we were not seeing any data. I think we had a very productive meeting with them, helping their CAO and their chair, Chairman Ziegemeyer, understand that this council is data-driven. And it's one thing to ask for money, but it's another thing to give us the data and show us where it's going and what it's needed for. So in the coming weeks, actually requested, and their CAO said we should have it in a few weeks, some different budgets, some different expense reports of what different homeless services are projected to cost or are costing. So we can take a look at those as a council when it comes to things like, our some of the CARES Act funding or the ARPA funding or CDBG or whatever funding we're going to have to contribute towards that, even out of our general fund. But we have requested that on behalf of the council so we can have a really in-depth conversation to figure out what and where we can contribute. Did inform them that we are looking at having a homeless workshop in the future, and how that would structure up. And how we envision that is we will have one with us as the city, because the one thing that really we haven't done is figure out what our role is, just us as the city. And we're not here to look at stats and numbers because we get those from the annual counts and stuff, but really, how do we fit into this issue that we need to solve this problem? And what is our role in that? Encourage them to actually do the same themselves, because the next stop would be to pull us together if they would entertain that. And then the third stop would be after both municipalities have done their own, come together, then get together with all the outside agencies that we all partner with, because we can't quite figure out amongst ourselves what to do, much less help them until we know really what we're doing. So it's kind of a structured approach, and that's what we proposed. So stay tuned. Hopefully more and more information will be coming forward from that. And it was really about working together. There was a lot of discussion, and thank you to the former Mayor Boomgarden, who warned me my phone would go kaboom when things hit. A little project called the Horseshoe, as I heard about. It's amazing what happens. The county went and talked to different people about what they were proposing, and our phone started blowing up. I know mine did, thinking that the city was doing something. So we've expressed the interest that we really want to work collaboratively with them, understand what they're doing when they're doing something that's adjacent to the city, to really help us understand and be able to field those calls and stuff. Because the misconception from people were we were expanding our sphere of influence, and it's like, nope, not us. So, that's the relationship that we want to have, is, really collaborative and transparent between the two organizations so that we can work. And we've discussed this. The key relationships are going to be between the city manager and the CAO and the mayor and the chair. And so with those, we're hoping to really nurture those this year and basically launch us into your year next year as the incoming mayor next year. So, we did have the workshops, and thank you, Spencer, and your team for everything you did there. Wish we'd had greater attendance. To add to Councilmember Boomgarden's thoughts as far as people that come before the city, it's also good to know that a lot of that money that we talked about has strings attached to it. We can only spend it on certain things. And that is something very, very important to realize as well. But there are a lot of programs. So as people come forward, the CDBG, I'd written that down and you brought that one up. That's a program. The Mr. Moody's team is getting ready, and I think it should be going out in the next few weeks and kind of ramping up. Am I correct, Mr. Moody? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Make sure I had the right email in my brain when I was thinking. You know, that's a great opportunity, and that's one source of funding. So if you qualify for those, make sure you attend those meetings, understand it, and apply. The team building workshop, amazing. Thank you, Ms. Langley and the entire E-team and this council, because it is the rare opportunity that we get in a room and able to have a candid discussion and really, you know, come together as a team. And we're a team of a little over 300 people. So I like our odds in the NFL, especially if you're going against the 49ers. No, I'm kidding. But with that, you know, the better that we learn how to work together and understand each other, the more this city is going to thrive. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that was in that room for being open, candid, and looking, as we always do, for what's the best interest of this city. Because at the heart of it, I can sum it up, that whole meeting of that, you had a room full of people that care about this city and want the very best for it. And that's evident in the one really fun thing that I got to do, and to the former mayor at the end of the dais there. They say plagiarism is the best form of flattery. So I stole a play out of your book from a few years ago because it was a great idea. We did a mayor city bus tour, and we're going to be adding more of those. But in contrast, we can go back to 10 years ago to where we were, the recession had happened. We had no starts in housing hardly. We had gone from a high of 800-900 permits a year down to, we were lucky if we got about 30. And to be able to take the leaders of the community around throughout the city, and we hit roughly 28 different stops, and show them the work that it's not the council, it's not just E-team, it's all 300 plus members of us that came together and did our part that has this city heading in a great direction. We've got over 600 homes right now that aren't just, you know, what ifs. We're not talking the Bogue Stewart area. We're talking, we drove to sites to where they're moving the ground. The houses are being built. That was amazing. We talked about the potential hotels coming in. We talked about the retail businesses coming in. And to that, I want to thank all 300 plus, not just the 5 of us here in our E-team, but all 300 plus members for all of their work, because that is what's going to enable this city to thrive in the future. You know, people are expecting services, they're wanting businesses in town, and this is the proof that it's coming. So I want to express my thanks, and I really want to express my thanks to the small team that put it together. Ms. Langley, Mr. Moody, your team, our driver, everybody that was there. It was a collaborative effort, and it was amazing. And we're going to do it again. We will be promoting it about the end of, the next one should be somewhere around the end of March, 1st of April. But I asked my colleagues to join me because we want to change this up a little bit. The first one was out of your playbook. Didn't know what we were getting into, but it was fun. So, yeah. So what we'd like to do on the next one, if I can have all of our council involved as we go to different areas of the city, it would be nice if we would have the different members of a council. We might even tie it back to the districts. You and I spoke about this, and you even brought that up, even though we're at large. So let's not confuse that. But different stops along the way, suddenly we pull up, and Grace, you're there to meet us. Gotcha. Lemonade is free. Cups are $5. I get it. So, but these are the things that would be nice to do, and just to really show people how we really work well together. So look for more information on that.
Agent, also known as POSLOC, into Ellis Lake and 4. authorize the finance director to make a supplemental appropriation of $142,000 to an appropriate account number. Mr. Jim Shad, would you like to present this matter?
This is another improvement that has been in the works for a bit of time. The city, in conjunction with Yuba Water Agency, has studied the water quality of Ellis Lake, and it was determined that the primary driver of poor water quality was the phosphorus level in the lake that provides a nutrient for algae growth and causes harmful algae blooms primarily in the summer. The secondary issue is that common carp, are very aggressive at stirring up the bottom of the lake, which are a detriment to the treatment to remove the phosphorus. So they stir, the phosphorus treatment is made, sequesters the phosphates, sinks to the bottom, but then the carp can come in and push that back up to the water column. So the consulting company has recommended both the treatment and the carp removal. I will point out, just so everybody understands, the two contracts total less than the $142,000 that the water agency granted us. And that is because originally the primary consultant HDR was going to do both the carp removal and the phosphate treatment. They decided that they did not want to do the phosphate treatment, and so we bid that out ourselves and actually received a lower price on that. So there are some savings there. This is a reimbursable grant, so we will just not ask for as much money from the Yuba Water Agency when we submit our bills.
Perhaps we could use some of the residual funds before reimbursing the water agency for testing, so that we could do a water quality test around the lake before, and so that then we can do a water quality test after, and I would suggest a program of regular testing to see if there's a trend line, see what the water quality is for the periods afterwards, because one of the unknowns, and Vice Mayor and I have been on an ad hoc committee addressing this. The unknown are how well this is going to work. We've been given assurances by HDR, and they are a first-rate firm. They believe it could last 3 to 5 years. Let's say 3. That ends up for an economical addressing of the problem. But we want to know what the water quality is.
That is an excellent thought. I will say that the consultant that's doing the phosphate treatment will work with us to test the water before and after, not on a continuous ongoing basis. So we could potentially ask the water agency if we can do more testing further out. And I think that would be an acceptable use.
So I'm certain, I'd be surprised if they didn't embrace it. At this point, I'd like to add one more comment, and then I'll move it to you. Vice Mayor Padacavoli and I have been serving on an ad hoc committee addressing this matter, and we would consult with members of the water agency and their ad hoc committee, but it wasn't a joint ad hoc committee. We're just working towards a common goal, and we have gotten the matter to this point, and after discussion with council, we've deemed it advisory to cancel that committee. There's probably a better term. Abandon the committee. Cause its termination is what we'll do. It served its purpose, and we can always bring it back to life. Right now, the city is on point in solving the problem with the tools we have. and we want to see how well these tools work before we consider anything else. In real time, though, I believe that we are still studying the possibility of bringing Yuba River water into the lake. And that's moving in parallel, but at a slower rate as we want to see how well the Boslak and carp removal works. Bruce, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Not really. I was going to just kind of follow up with what you said. That this is the first step. Hopefully we buy 3 to 5 years to look at other solutions, which not only was the river, but also included a possibility on a additional well, and how we could treat those waters for phosphorus before it goes in. So it could be, you know, depending the mileage we get out of this 142,000, it could be that that's just a continuous process every 3 to 5 years, and could end up being significantly less than what we would ever spend coming from the river. But what it actually does is it buys us time to look further into those other options.
Well said. Any other comments?
Yeah, to the chair, a couple things, just to kind of piggyback on what your thoughts are on the testing. I do water sample testing periodically for agriculture wells, and it's really pretty simple. If it's just a matter of building a data log, we can do it. We can actually collect the samples ourselves, Public Works can, and we have we all know fairly well, we have a good friend in town that has a technical lab that has the ability to test that water and give us whatever reports that we're looking for, whether it's phosphorus ratings or whatever it is. He'll give us a pretty thorough spreadsheet. And we can do this very affordably. Just to build that, so 5 years from now, we have that log data. It's very easy to do it.
The sense I have of it is that you would test at various points around North Lake and the main lake. And you would test regularly at those same points so that you would have good hard data.
Correct. The other thing I want to bring up, and I had a conversation with the same owner of the lab, but on a different topic. We were talking about, and I think this is the right time to mention it since we're on this Ellis Lake topic. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys sat on the ad hoc committee, but part of the problems with the lake was the fact that we aren't able to actually pump water out of the lake during the stagnant months when we need to, right? And there may be some thought to be put into on how to use Ellis Lake water for dust control with all of our racetracks down the river bottoms, as well as using Ellis Lake water for irrigation systems, including the soccer fields in the river bottom area that uses a tremendous amount of water during the summer months to keep them green. We have some of the pump infrastructure in place because of how we discharge water from Ellis Lake, and we may be able to tap into that current infrastructure relatively affordable, that it might behoove us to look into some of those ideas in how to utilize that lake in order to keep a fluctuation of the water coming down in order to present the need for water to come back in. Does that make sense? So you have this cycle. So I'm just throwing ideas out there.
No, I understand. No, go ahead. Imagine the cost side of that, Councilman Belzer, would be that we would have to run the pumps longer to replace the water. But
essentially the long-term cost, I think you'd have some initial infrastructure costs in creating an irrigation line, like an 8-inch pipe I don't think you need much bigger than that. I'm not an irrigation design guy, but from the pump system throughout the river bottoms that people are able to, the water trucks can draw from and the irrigation systems can pull from down in the river bottom area. I don't think it'd be worthwhile to try to use that through all of our city parks and all of that type of stuff because it would cost a lot more to get there. But when you're talking about putting in an 8-inch irrigation line from our pumps to our soccer fields, that can be done pretty affordably. It doesn't have to be done like a drinking water line. It's a different totally different construction process. So.
Sounds like a really good idea.
Anyways, something to chew on.
Gray water. That would be a possible idea if we end up with a process of pumping water from the river to the lake and there's an overflow, or from the wells. At this point, if we just do it with the chemical, which we probably haven't said, but should say, it's a very safe process with the public of doing the phosphate thing. If we're only doing that portion of it, then there's really no excess water to be pumping out. If we did it with one of the other processes down the road, then that might be a viable idea to take a look at.
I think it's merits worth looking at, because if you're from the consultant's report, HDR's report, indicates that it's not, phosphate is a problem, but circulation would certainly help the lake. Yep. So if we can move water in and out of the lake without running afoul regulatory wise, I think it would be a bonus, and it would potentially solve another issue down in the river front, getting water.
And I don't want to disagree with that, but again, there's a lot of steps that we're going to be going through here. If we don't go from the river because we can afford it, that's one thing. If we go from the wells, but we have to put phosphate filters on them, we've got, I mean, I think it's a great idea to keep in mind with the whole process, but it's probably not something that it's going to be in this next 3 to 5 years of deciding how we're going to move it, is my guess.
On throwing out a concept that was talked about.
Yeah.
The dialogue through, but anyways, I'm just throwing ideas out there.
So that might be worthy of a future initiative, probably in advance of the summer, if you try to do something like that. So,
through the chair,
sir.
Just answer a question if somebody could. Clarification: when we started a contract with EKI for water testing and sampling like 3 years ago, is that complete and done and over? Do we hit our benchmark? Are they still doing the testing? EKI.
No, it's all the testing has been final.
Your mic for one, but
all the testing has been finalized. It took us a year, or took the agency took the lead on that. So the agency paid for that.
EKI is done, just out of curiosity, because they're still doing the aeration pumps in certain areas. So I wasn't quite sure if that was still part of an ongoing study or if that's already done. Maybe it's a question for another time. I was just kind of curious when we started talking about water testing.
I can look into that. I'm not familiar with EKI doing the testing. I know they're supporting the well install at Gavin Park.
Okay.
We can look into the testing portion.
Thank you.
Make a motion.
Second.
Approved. Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Okay, Planning Commission appointments. Councilman Gilchrist.
How are you? Planning Commission appointments. My planning commissioner is Margie Rollins. Still. Thank you. I did that, but anytime the mayor asks for something, I see what I can do to accommodate his request.
I apologize.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah.
you did
Anyway,
a heck of a job, Stuart.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She'll be happy that she's been nominated at least twice.
Okay, that's a blushing you're saying here. Anyway, I have 2 appointments to make. I have the 3 commissioners that I had appointed. 2 have resigned, and 1 I will be replacing. So right now, I will be naming Mary Langsdorf, who is a senior executive at Franklin Booth here in Marysville, a recent president of Rotary, very involved in the community. She's one of my at-large appointments. And then my resident appointment is Mr. Steve Mesher. who is a senior executive at Measure Door. They are both first-rate people. I've invited each of them to, I invited Mary to a lunch with the city manager and myself, and got some momentum going on the appointment, and did the same in a breakfast with the city manager and our economic development director. We had a breakfast last Friday with Steve Mesher and getting them acquainted with things. And I encourage the same thing with your appointment, Stuart. It seems to pay real dividends. They get a sense of what's going on, and they get to talk to the people they'll be working most closely with on the Planning Commission. The third appointment, I've been in discussion with Adventist Rideout senior executives. The new CEO, Chris Champlin, has made a suggestion, and I want to get that appointment made. I've not spoken with his suggestion, and I don't want to make the appointment until we've had a conversation. But it is a first-rate suggestion, and this person works at Adventist Rideout and has a keen knowledge of what's going on with the Blue Zone, or as Stuart calls it, the Medical Arts District, which, by the way, when the new CEO heard that term, he wants to embrace that term versus the Blue Zone. He really likes Medical Arts District. Anyway, once we get that nailed down, then I would be naming most likely the person who's been suggested in a text just before I got here from the orbit of the Adventist Rideout group. Does that require anything, Mr. City Attorney?
Your at large is simply an amount of technical to require the council to approve.
Okay, I require an approval on Mary Langsdorff from Franklin Booth, who brings a wealth of experience to the commission, a local knowledge.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have
Second.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Thank you very much. I won't ask you again on Margie Rollins. Okay, committee reports. Councilmember Belza, anything to report?
Nothing to report, but I will next time.
Okay, I'm going to bounce around the batting order here. Vice Mayor Buttacavoli, so you don't get preempted.
As I think some notifications went out, maybe emailed today with the RW Regional Waste Management, Associate RWMA. Recycling is going to get a little tougher here, especially for some of you with restaurants. You're not going to like it if you haven't already seen it, but it's going to involve us heavily in the construction business too. So, and construction, restaurants. So you should be getting, I believe I got that in today's email. Did you get one of those from Keith Martin? I don't know if that went out to everybody, but it's the start of the process that Recology will be doing to increase their, I don't know how to put it, increase their volume of recycling. They have to get to a certain level based on the state, and this is how the state has said it's going to be done. So other than that, Transit Authority, I think it's just moving along still with the new building and some new vehicles, and that's it for committees. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Hudson.
With the Transit Authority, I was elected chair, so I get that joy for the year. Also, they did get some of their funding to be able to start with their new facilities over off of Avondale and Linda. They're still 100% operating here out of Marysville. It's going to stay that way until they can move into the new facilities, which probably won't be for several years. But also, we're still waiting to hear about Caltrans is going to affect that and so forth. So still on LAFCO, nothing to report there. Still several open up subject items in LAFCO, but nothing's been defined at this particular moment. That's all I got.
Councilmember Gilchrist.
I have no committee reports at this time.
Thank you, sir. And I don't have any either. Let's move on to council correspondence. Madam Clerk.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For tonight's meeting, all council members have received a sealed letter, which is at your position on the dais tonight. And that is it.
A sealed letter. Oh. My. Okay. Thank you. Where were we? Mr. City Manager, what do you have to report?
I had a few things beyond our new hires. First of all, we did have a good cleanup activity last week in conjunction with SALOV, and our public works staff were out there assisting with that. That was at the old Long's drug area, and looks great. I did want to also say that I am very excited about the new planning commission composition. I think between them, our new staff, and our consultant Kathy Pease, we have a great recipe for doing a great general plan and specific plans. So that should be moving forward. Mr. Flores had sent in a text out, but I'd like him to just briefly go over the new business openings we have. I think that's important for everybody to know.
Sure, happy to do so. Mr. Mayor and City Council, I want to tell you also that your community development and economic development team is off to a fired start. I mean, a lot is going on already. I want to re-welcome Christina, who started today and barely sat in her seat, didn't even have her computer on, and already sent out an enforcement letter. So I don't know how you did that without turning the computer on, but it was already there. So pretty amazing to get off to that start. We did send you the text out about 3 new restaurants that are opening up. The Thai restaurant at Ellis Lake that actually opened today, R.B. Brinkley Guns and Ammo that opened a few days ago. And I especially want to thank Chief Sachs for the work he put into attracting that business to the downtown and having them open there. And Habit Burgers, which is going to open its doors on the 9th with 37 new employees in Marysville, which is really fantastic. And I would encourage you all as city council members to try to go to their openings when they have it. None of them are doing an official ribbon cutting. I know Councilman Buttacavoli questioned that, but I think showing up as city council would be a wonderful gesture for you to do. And maybe we can put something together where we could go as a group. I think that would be a lot of fun. Just also want to mention that there are notable projects in the works. A couple of them are a brand name drive-through coffee house that we're looking at, a Mexican drive-through as well. And at your request, that RFP has been sent out to multiple developers for the development of the 5 acres on B Street, which is fantastic. And we've already got indication that we're going to get some solid developers interested in a tax revenue producing business at that site. So pretty excited about that. We will discussions and interest from discussions. And I'll provide more information on the discussions as the weeks go by. I also want to just add at this moment that I'm really honored and excited about the many economic development opportunities that are here in Marysville. There's a lot more than I expected, and I'm really jazzed to be a part of it. I'm looking forward to help carry out your vision to make sure that this happens. And I also want to really add that I'm impressed by the dedicated and hardworking staff here at City Hall. You know, they really bring a lot of passion to help improve the lives of the residents of Marysville, and they bring it to them with them every day. And I've witnessed that. I've only been here, a total of 5 days, but I just see the passion that they bring to work. And then just in the words of our city manager, I think he might have borrowed these words from somebody, but, let's get her done. And so I'm looking forward to it. Get her done. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Just 2 other quick things. Actually, perhaps it's just one left now. Strategic planning, we have a bunch of vacations stacked up with staff, and I would like them to be here for that activity. So we are looking at the week of the 7th through 11th to schedule that workshop. That's not set in stone yet, but I want to throw that out there, preferably like Wednesday the 9th if possible. March. And I don't need an answer now, but I'll be calling you individually to see if that's doable. March 7th through 11th, preferably the middle of the week, Wednesday the 9th.
You're done.
And I think I've said enough.
Okay, we'll start on council comments and requests. Stuart, I'm going to call you first. Council comments, requests.
Oh my goodness. Great staff work, everyone. City staff, you must be acknowledged, including the new ones. Thank you. Welcome on board.
Councilman Belsa.
Yeah, I'm got a couple of different things to kind of speak into. I did stop by, wasn't completely in participation on the SALEV event this last weekend, but there was a lot that got done there. And I think it's important for us to be aware of their future contribution in what we're going to try to get accomplished at Bryant Field. There's going to be a lot of demolition in getting rid of the existing wall, and SALEV and the volunteers have committed to help get the bulk of that out of there. So there's still a lot of planning and collaboration that's got to happen, but hopefully February and March and April will be big Saturdays with working with SALEV and getting that done. They're stepping up to the plate big time to help us out as a city, and definitely need the recognition that they deserve on that stuff. So stay tuned on that coming down the line. Excited to have both of you guys on board. Welcome. Dan and Christina, just excited. I'm thrilled to see the team that's being developed here, and excited to see where we're headed as a city, because we're starting to get really great players on the field. And we have had great players on the field, but we're building to that team, and I think we're heading in a great direction. You're doing a great job putting the right people in the right places, so keep it up. And Dan, I had a question for you on the Thai restaurant in the Watermark Shopping Center. Is there also another restaurant that is going to, I just saw the doors open and there were some people working in where the old grill was. The Thai restaurant was kind of on one building, and then there's a other bar and grill space. Is there another one working in there too?
I'm not really aware of that, so okay. I'm not sure, but I'll check into
Or maybe that is where the Thai restaurant's going. I don't know, but I know there was a couple.
The Thai restaurant has a Thai sign on it, Thai food. So
okay.
The other, I did see people working in the place you're talking about, but I hadn't seen anything come in.
Well, they've had an alcohol permit request up there for months, requesting a license. I just didn't know if there was an update on that.
I'll look into it and see. I know there is another Thai restaurant opening up, but not there. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, hey, we like our Thai food in Marysville,
yeah,
I guess.
So, yeah.
But
I'll find out and let you know, Councilman Belza.
Sure. Thank you. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hudson.
Thank you. Not a lot to say. I'm excited that we have a couple of these slots filled with you guys, Christina and Dan. It's really nice to be able to get that side of the building full and kind of go from there. So I look forward to working with you guys on that stuff or seeing what goes on. It's good to have a team growing. I also just want to comment real quick. I did really truly appreciate the SALEV cleanup that went on, because I go around that building a lot, and there's one outlet that you always see the homeless people hunking around and kind of go from there. So to see that bush gone and just SALEV signs was kind of near and dear. It's like going, okay, they removed some of the vegetation. So that was good. I appreciate what SALEV does, and I appreciate what everybody does on our team here with the city council staff. public safety, public works and all.
I just want to say I was remiss in, I mentioned our public works folks, but they have been working on several projects to clean things up in conjunction with the chiefs. I know we're working on the bleachers. Those are moving right along. They were very involved in the cleanup at Long's Drugs. So things are just clicking along. I think little by little, we're going to get this place cleaned up.
Cool.
We also did apply for a second grant for Ellis Lake. This was a Clean California grant through Caltrans. We'll see how we do on that, but we're hoping to get some funding, some more work related to Ellis Lake.
Thank you. I have one more question, Mayor. This goes to both the chiefs, because I know that you guys have been the primary factor for helping out with cleaning up on Simpson Lane and so forth with the K-rails and so forth. Are we still overseeing that, or as we move that on to somebody else because the K-rails are moved, Yellow Gate is open, and it's become another dump site? I mean, I travel out when I go to the fire academy all the time, and I was just kind of curious what's going down there. I know that we got lots of stuff on both your plates, but you guys spearheaded that, seeing where we're going.
In regards to the Simpson Lane property, that's completely a county property. We have been fortifying and patrolling the Hollywood Trailer Park area on the city side to keep that at bay. I usually keep in contact with the Yuba County Code Enforcement team regularly in regards to that side and other county side, multiple sites issues type stuff. So, and they're still working with the property owner trying to get compliance and keep that at bay, but it does have ebbs and flows that have to go through there still.
Yeah, I forgot that that was not city property right where I was speaking of. I just know that you guys were big and spearheaded the program there. So as long as we're still working on it, because you guys did a phenomenal job on cleaning up in that whole area down there. And I hate to see it go in reverse. That's all. So thank you.
First, I haven't left yet, have I?
I'm not jumping anything in front of you. As everybody has, I want to welcome both of you here. I'm glad to have you. I've known Dan for a long time and really glad to have you on our team. I want to really thank Jim for keeping the Ellis Lake ad hoc committee on the rails, at least most of the time. We would lose a little traction once in a while there, and Jim would kind of pull us back in. And the same with the ball field and the fence. You've been leading that very well the whole time, keeping it moving. So we're not losing traction. Today is the new Lunar New Year. So don't forget, come March 5th and 6th will be Hawkeye Festival coming up. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a few things. First, Mr. Dan Flores, the Economic Development Director. I had first heard his name from my friend Dee Dee Brady, their next door neighbors, and she just said all these wonderfully nice things about him. And she was right. I've had the opportunity to have a couple of meetings with him and with one of the new members of the Planning Commission. And we're very fortunate to have you on board. Welcome. As to the SALOB is such a great resource, and it's one that we're all so very thankful for. And so I don't want this comment to be taken out of place, but I'm sad they had to be called, or they had to address the problems behind those buildings, behind the old cannery, behind the lawns. St. Mark does a really good job of policing their area. The tenants, and I'm including Ample Health because I've noticed their dumpster overflows and it's unsecured. And you can buy locks that those guys can't break. and Mountain Mike's, that's where a great deal of that trash comes from. I would encourage our community service people or whoever else deals with these things to go to those tenants, because it comes from tenants. I don't want to start naming them all off and drag their names through the mud. Let's give them a chance to straighten things out. But particularly the owner of that Long's drugs facility. If it's Long's, they should never be allowed to allow that place to get in the condition it was. The delivery chute was full of water and junk and muck, and it's shameful. And so I would encourage community service people to be very diligent and the message should be, okay, it's clean, keep it that way, or we're going to be all over it. And they should be given no rest if they don't comply with that. That's it.
Might I have one comment on the Long's Drugs? We're hoping for a change in ownership in that soon, and perhaps some tenancy that would keep it in good repair.
Well, and one more comment then. Thank you for bringing that up. You reminded me of something. We had picked up information over the transom that the county, in fact, Vice Mayor Butticavoli and I got involved in discussions on this. The county had been interested in leasing or buying that Long's drug facility. And I don't know how many people agree with me, but my sense is the county has more of a presence inside the city of Marysville than is appropriate, considering all of the available space out in the county to do some of their work. And this was an issue that I tried to address during the 2020 campaign with respect to the juvenile hall facility for 3 counties that's in Marysville on property that I had dreamt, but it was an impossible dream to come true, could be transferred to the city. That project was too far along. Again, the Vice Mayor and I have met with Don Blazer, who is sympathetic to our concerns about the county footprint. And we have requested a meeting of the liaison committee, which is the liaison committee between the city and the county. Vice Mayor and I are the representatives of the city council. I believe Supervisor Blazer and Gary Bradford, I believe, are the representatives from the Board of Supervisors. And we want to make it very clear about our view of the size of their footprint. We would rather see it reduced than any consideration of enlarging. Now, others may disagree with me, but I've got a few minutes to talk, so I spoke.
Madam Clerk,
Yes.
have we scheduled that yet?
It's already been requested from my counterpart at the county, yes.
Great, thank you.
So that's in motion, and I'm glad I remembered that. Next meeting will be Tuesday.
To the chair.
Oh, please, go ahead.
I had one more thing I was going to request.
I have one more, I just remembered too. Please, go ahead.
With the new planning commissioners that are on board, we've got 3 new ones and then possibly a 4th one coming on. And when I was on the planning commission, one of the things that was always frustrating was the lack of communication between the planning commission and the council. And I'm just wondering if in an orientation, yeah, you'd be the man. If we could have a joint meeting or a joint session sometime and just have some dialogue and introduction and that. So that was just a request, not immediate request, but somewhere in the future.
And perhaps we could shape something that would not violate the Brown Act if it's merely social and becoming engaged with. Oh, great. What a great idea.
Thank you.
And again, as the Vice pointed out, it's Chinese New Year. I was in Hong Kong one Chinese New Year's, never seen anything like that. They party. Most of the semiconductors on the planet are made in Asia, and the semiconductor production goes down like this during the month of February because it's one big party. And we get the benefit of it with the Bach Kai Festival, which always is delayed a few weeks. I believe it's in early March this year. We're all looking forward to that. I'm glad I remembered that. Okay, next meeting, February 15th, 6 p.m. Adjourned.
I know.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.